Hello and welcome to FP Live. I'm Ravi Agrawal, Foreign Policy's Editor-in-Chief. From Gaza to Sudan and beyond, the world is besieged with humanitarian crises, most of them man-made. Today, we're going to try and look at potential solutions. In a moment, we will speak with the man who stepped down as the UN's top humanitarian envoy just last year. If this is your first time joining us on FP Live, welcome. We will take some subscriber questions throughout. If you would like to join in, use the code FP Live for a discount. We're also a podcast. Just look for FP Live on your favorite audio platform. So, there's a long list of global crises right now. According to the UN's refugee agency, 120 million people are displaced worldwide by violence or persecution. That is 1.5% of humanity. And it involves countries like Ukraine, Syria, Afghanistan, Lebanon. The list is long. I want to shine a spotlight on two of them in particular today, Sudan and Gaza. Sudan's been in the throes of civil war for 2 years now. An estimated 150,000 people have been killed, and 14 million people have been displaced from their homes. A famine is underway, disease is spreading, and this is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis, and it gets very little media attention, to be frank. And then there's Gaza. After Hamas's horrific attack on October 7, 2023, Israel has waged a protracted conflict there. Over the weekend, the Israeli Defense Forces said it struck 200 targets across Gaza in 48 hours, targeting what it called terrorist organizations. One of the sites included a school in which 54 Palestinians were killed, including many children. The death toll now in Gaza has topped 50,000. Aid has slowed to a trickle, and the entire strip is in danger of famine. I have two main questions today. First, is there more that could be done from a humanitarian perspective? And second, the political side, how to exert more pressure to bring opposing sides to some sort of closure. Joining me now, Martin Griffiths is a British diplomat who was the UN's Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator from 2021 to 2024. He's previously worked in a range of roles in the British government and in the aid sector. Martin, welcome to FP Live.
Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for this really great opportunity.
So let's start with Gaza, Martin. How bad are things on the ground right now?
It's so difficult to find a word that really answers that question, as you know. It's egregious, as people in London said. It's a catastrophe. We've said this for months. Somebody said the other day, we're running out of adjectives. It's absolutely shocking. We've had a blockade since March the 2nd, as you know. We now have today the beginning of an extraordinary scene outside one of the new distribution points under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation program, which we all deplore, bringing great, great suffering and danger to many people. And we got in, what, 100 trucks perhaps in the last week or so, thanks to Israel needing to show some remorse. Nothing like enough. And, I'm told there are 9,000 trucks sitting outside, as you know, full
Mm.
of aid that's needed across the landscape and ain't getting in because of the incredible brutal assault that's happening at the moment.
And Martin, we've been told that a famine could set in if it hasn't already. Talk to us a little bit about what that would mean, and contextualize that globally.
You know, there's a very rigorous system to judge whether a famine exists or not, as you know, Ravi. Too rigorous, I think, because it goes beyond reality. Of course, there is starvation. There are children dying of starvation in Gaza. There is a famine. It's looming, or it's famine-like conditions. But let's be honest, once we finally get an adjudication, it'll be long past. And what happens in a famine, as you know, is that the hunger goes viral. It eats up the bodies of those suffering from it. They die, of course, in thousands. We're now 40 years away from the great Live Aid event, for example, with Bob Geldof. the famine in Ethiopia, which shocked us all. And we're not getting the shock that we need quite there yet. But it's more than hunger, famine. It destroys you. It destroys families. And it requires incredibly deep therapy, food and medicines and care, water to recover from. So we're on that brink, if not beyond it.
And you last worked at the United Nations and you've previously worked at other aid agencies. How are they operating in Gaza? I mean, very difficult conditions, of course. Many don't have access anymore. How challenging is it?
You know, Ravi, I've been doing this work for 5 decades, including as a frontline aid worker back in the late 70s. And so I think I can say with some confidence that I've never seen anything like as difficult and as bad as this. And just for a moment, focusing on the aid workers, I mean, obviously the civilians are much, much more important, but the aid workers who remain there, who have not left,
Mm.
who are at risk of being killed, as you know, Gaza is the worst killing ground for aid workers in the world, mostly UNRWA staff, but also others. Um, there isn't food to feed them either, obviously. They're in the middle of this situation. They have no assurance of their safety. They are hounded by the announcements every day of further displacement and so forth. They stay. And I just can only imagine in a small story, as it were, that what they will come out when we hope Gaza does come out of this horror as well. So I think they're very professional. They're extremely experienced cadre. They come from jobs like this all over the world, and they're utterly, utterly, utterly committed. And of course, they're very, very angry.
And Martin, since you bring up UNRWA, which of course has a mandate to operate there, um, there have been allegations, of course, that they've been infiltrated by Hamas. You're not in the UN anymore, but as an outsider looking in, how do you assess those claims?
You know, I think I assess them as being unfounded, as being lacking any evidence, lacking any further investigation, and criminally responsible for the eventual defunding of UNRWA and its possible disappearance. UNRWA is, just to say it again, the backbone of international aid to the Palestinian people. And more than that, as you know, it's also their companion to their future, which we hope is a two-state solution. So getting rid of UNRWA is a desperate, urgent destruction of hope. Those people in UNRWA who were, alleged to have been part of the awful, October 7th killings, and there was investigations by the UN. They didn't get any evidence from Israel, despite the claims. And this is a story we've seen ever since. You know, recently when we see the accusations of aid being taken by Hamas, which is a principal justification for this unseemly and appalling blockade, claims are fine, that they do not add up to criminality. And we need to do something. We includes, by the way, the Western countries, to bring these claims to the court, effectively. That's what courts are for, all over the world. I think we'd all like to do that. That these claims can be made so easily. Look at the killing of those Palestinian Red Crescent workers a few weeks ago, where we actually did get some evidence of what happened, fortunately. But there's been no follow-up on the perpetrators of that terrible atrocity. So I'm not impressed by claims. I'm impressed by evidence.
Mm. Martin, we promised each other that we'd make this about solutions, to at least think
Mm.
about
Mm.
potential solutions here. What do you see from an aid perspective as some way of alleviating the suffering of the people in Gaza right now?
Right. I think I'm so glad that you do, Ravi, and your magazine does focus on solutions because it's often the orphan, isn't it, in these discussions in international attention. So it's great that you do that. We'll touch perhaps later on the political solutions, but the aid solutions for Gaza, of course, require the blockade to be lifted. That's quite a simple, if difficult, matter. Of course, it also means that the not just the UN, the humanitarian agencies, you mentioned them earlier, who have the experience and capacity and the goods to deliver aid and the plan to deliver aid. They recently published a new plan, which also increases the monitoring on what I call leakage, potential leakage of aid to the people who are not supposed to be the beneficiaries. So there is a plan, there is experience, there is the aid, but it's just not getting through. So the first, as it were, very concrete, but sadly distant solution to the aid issue is to lift the blockade and let the people get back to work. Tom Fletcher has been very voluble on that, for example. Now, that ain't going to happen, as we know, and this is why the solutions focus on this is so important, unless there is serious leverage from governments in the region and also outside, and on Israel, on its allies in the West, to take action to make this blockade a reputation killer.